Hey everyone. Um, I wanted to talk about something really cool that I ended up learning today with Svetlana and some trimester 2 students. So I talked probably to every one of you at this point about Docker and how much I love Docker. It's so cool, such a neat tool. Um, and I found a new way to use it that I wanted to share because I think it's really awesome. I think in the past I had shared a way that I've in the past made my own dev environments for the purpose of working on projects that I need very specific pieces of software installed, very specific versions. Today I found a much easier way to do that, and I think it's really cool. So I just wanted to record it and show it off to you so that you could see it as well. Maybe even use this. So, example. It's a pretty small example. I've got a folder here that's on my host machine. It's on my Mac. All that's really here is an HTML file that I want rendered, which has some, CSS, JavaScript, images, a few other things. I also have just a basic Flask application. It doesn't do anything fancy. It just ends up having one route that says hello. And I could make all of this run locally on my Mac, but if I need a very specific version of Python, or maybe two different applications I'm working on need different versions of Python, that can become a little frustrating. I've tried setting up databases on my local machine, and sometimes I need different databases or different versions running, and that can become very cumbersome and frustrating, especially when you mess it up, which inevitably all software engineers do. We mess stuff up. It's part of messing around with stuff and writing code. Hard to know exactly what you're going to do until you try it, and then if you try it and it breaks, it's really frustrating when it's on your host machine. So Docker saves us from that. We can build in this Docker environment and break it, and that's totally fine. If we break it, we can nuke it and start from scratch. So I have in here two files. One is a Docker Compose file, and the other is a Docker file. I'm going to start with the Docker Compose file to show you what it's building. It's building one service, which is going to be one Docker container running at the end of the day. It has an entry point that has sleep and infinity, which means that it will just always run forever until you decide to shut the machine down. It's building from a Docker file, so you could have specified a specific image you wanted to use, but I actually wanted to use my own Docker file. The context is this folder. The Docker file is named Dockerfile, which I will show you over here in a moment. And then volumes. So one volume, it binds to the host machine Docker socket. That way it can communicate with Docker. But the other important thing it does is mount the current directory on my host machine, which is just, this directory right here, with a directory on the Docker container called /app. So it's mounting this file system into the Docker container so that when I manipulate it in the Docker container, it's actually just manipulating the files on my host machine on my Mac. So whenever I build this, it will come over here to this Docker file and build from this system. So I'm saying that I want to run an Ubuntu 2204 system, but you might, for different projects you work on, need different versions. Maybe you're working in 18 or 16 or 14 or 20, or something other than Ubuntu. Except at our school, you're going to be on one of those Ubuntu flavors. That's one of those Ubuntu versions. And then I know I have some stuff I want to install. So of course, first thing you should always do is update, and then next is upgrade all of your software to get them to the latest versions. But then I want to install Git, because I know I'm using Git. I want to install Python and pip. Maybe I wanted to install MySQL server. Maybe I wanted curl. Now that I know I have pip installed, I can install Flask, and maybe I want to use SQL Alchemy. And I also want to install the Python 3 MySQL DB library to communicate with it. And you could go on and on and on. These are just some examples of stuff to install. I'm going to go ahead and comment out some of these so that my install doesn't take too long. I think I'll comment out these. No, I don't need those. I don't really want curl. I don't need Git right now. I do need Python and Flask though, so I'm going to leave those uncommented so that I can make sure I have Python and Flask so I can show you it running once I get this Docker container up and running. Cool. So now I'm on my host machine. Let's see, where is that? None of those. And I want to run this Docker compose file, which is going to build everything. And I believe that is Docker compose. I'm going to specify the file to use, and that's compose-dev.yaml. And we're going to do the up command. Docker compose up with that specific file. Let's see this go. Oh, I'm going to put -d so that it doesn't hold my terminal hostage forever. Cool. So it is building. So it's doing the update. It's doing the upgrade of all of the packages. It's installing Python 3 as well as pip. Don't forget when you're doing this, you need to make sure you're always using that -y right here so that it doesn't stop in the middle of installing something and ask if you want to install it. That -y guarantees it's just saying yes. Just auto accept everything. We want to include it all so that we've got it. We don't have to have human intervention while we're installing stuff. Cool. So it built. Again, it started up in this file. It built the Docker file, which was this one. So I've got this instance running. I now should have something that has Python, pip, and Flask installed. And then, important, it mounted a file system. So when I go into this, and I'll do that in just a second, I should have this file system that's on my Mac in the /app directory on the Docker container. They're the exact same files. They're not copied or anything. They are just mounted. So it's literally the same file system, but I'll be able to manipulate everything inside of the Docker container, which is very cool. Okay, so if I look at Docker desktop, here's the image that was built. Here's the container that's running. Before I go into that container, there's an extension you need to download on VS Code called Dev Containers. So go ahead and download Dev Containers from Microsoft. This will allow you to log into your Dev Container, which is very, very cool. And once you have that, you can click on this icon at the bottom left with these little angle brackets. And we can say, I want to attach to a running container. There's the container that's running right now, so let me go ahead and click that. It opened it up in a new VS Code instance. Okay, now it doesn't look that different, but I do know that I'm in the container. If I come back over here and look, the one on the left is my local environment on my Mac, my host machine. And then here you can see, yep, I am connected to the app directory in this particular container. If there was another directory you wanted to connect to, we could remove the folder from that particular workspace. We could open a specific folder that you want opened. So you could select anything on the operating system itself. You could even just do / if you wanted. But I'm going to go ahead and do /app because that's where all of my files are. It's where I'm working. Cool. So this is the /app directory that has, again, all the exact same files, the HTML, the Python file. It's even got the Docker file and the YAML, or the Docker compose file in here, as well as the assets directory. So, but it's all inside of the context of the, oh, is this right? It must be. It looks different though. And I'm going to remove it one more time. It looks different. I don't know why it looks different. I'm going to close out of it because I don't understand what it's doing. And then I'm going to connect down here again. Attach to running container. There's that. Well, now it shows apps. I don't know why it looked different. It was probably fine, but I didn't trust it, so that's okay. The other thing to notice right here too is the terminal. It's already logged in. I'm actually inside of Linux. Right? It's a complete Docker container. I got the file system as well as the terminal ready to go here, as well as the tools I have installed. So Python 3 is installed. Git's probably not installed because I chose to comment that out. That means that MySQL is not installed. So I mean, I could at this point apt install git and install anything I want and say, yeah, actually I do want Git, so I'm going to go ahead and install that. You know, maybe I realized I wanted that, and so maybe I come in here and I say, you know, if this is my documentation of my entire development environment, maybe this is when I come in here and I type run apt get install -y git to document that, you know, I wanted Git installed, even though I ended up doing it manually here. If I needed to destroy this Docker container and rebuild it, I've now got that line here and I won't have to reinstall Git. It will all automatically be reinstalled when I build that Docker container again. Cool. So now that I'm in here, we could actually just work on code. We could do some stuff in Python. We could work on the HTML file. Maybe put something silly in here. I don't know where. How about just the title? And then there's a couple things you can do when you're wanting to host servers on here. So one thing I like to do when I'm just testing just HTML by itself is python 3-m http.server. So that opened up a server on port 8000. I'm going to go ahead and open that. You can open it in the browser, and it pops up just fine, which is really awesome. There's the OLA I put up top. So that's cool. And then let's say I kill that. And the other thing I want to do is maybe I want to run my Python 3. Let's do this Flask file. I want to run the Flask server, and it's going to run on 0.0.0.0 on port 8910. Okay, so it's running, so let's open it. So nothing found here, but it's because I need to go to this route /ola. Cool, and we got our text showing up, so we've got our whole API that we could run. If that was returning HTML, it would return it here. But this is really awesome because now I've got an entire Linux development environment on my Mac. You could be on a Windows, you could be on another Linux machine, but you've got everything running inside of Docker and automatically installed all the tools that you know you need. If you need a very specific version of certain software, you could make sure that it's installed here. You can fiddle with this machine and get it to be exactly what you want it to be by installing software through apt, through pip, whatever, while it's running. And then if you ever need to kill it, you just destroy the machine and then rebuild it with this Docker file, rebuild it with that Docker compose up command that we did, and it would be reinstalled from this, which is really awesome. What's nice too is you do this, you could have like this setup of a Docker compose dev YAML and Docker file inside of every folder that you might want to work on, and have a different environment that you're working in when you're manipulating those files and building and testing, which is super, super awesome. It's pretty small amount of Docker code to get this running, and then you've got a whole environment that you can work with. So let me go ahead and let's pretend that we're quitting VS Code, and maybe we're done working for the day, so let's go ahead and shut down this container. Maybe it's a new day, we want to work again. We can go ahead and come up to our containers, and let's go ahead and start this back up with that run button. Let's open up VS Code, and I want to go ahead and connect to attach to a running container. There it is again. So let's click it, and it should just pull back up all of our stuff. Yep, so we're back here, we're running, we're ready to go for development once again in a container. built specifically for this particular project with all of the software and tools we need installed in this Docker container. This is so cool. Took me like 3 hours today to figure out how to do it correctly, but it is a very small amount of code, and much cleaner and easier to make work than the environment setup I had showed you earlier this trimester. So, I was pretty excited about it. Just wanted to share this with everybody. If you have a use for this, I mean, I really think you should just practice this in general. Docker is a great tool, but I really think it be very beneficial to you so that you're not mucking up your local host machine. You can always have an environment built specifically for your application in Docker and never have to stress about hurting your machine, getting it out of whack in a place that you don't know how to fix it. You can always do it, like break Docker and just delete it and recreate it, and you're good to go again. Cool. Well, I appreciate y'all. Hope you have fun with Docker. Hope you have fun programming, and I will see you around. Bye, everyone.